The rain didn't just fall that night. It drowned the very idea of dignity. It hammered against the floor-to-ceiling glass of the Sterling Tower like 1,000 liquid fingers trying to claw their way inside. I stood in the shadows of the 44th floor, my lungs burning with the scent of ozone and the expensive, cloying stench of Arthur Sterling's Cuban cigars. I was his shadow, his ghost. For 12 years, I was the man who kept his secrets buried in spreadsheets and his scandals scrubbed from the headlines. I knew the exact temperature he liked his scotch. 3 fingers of Macallan 25, 1 square of ice. No conversation. I knew the sound of his shoes, bespoke Italian leather, as they clicked across the marble, a sound that usually signaled someone was about to lose their livelihood. That night, the click was different. It was frantic. I saw him through the crack in his heavy mahogany doors. Arthur Sterling, the man who owned half the skyline, was sweating. The light from his desk lamp carved deep, ugly trenches into his face, making him look less like a titan of industry and more like a cornered rat. He was feeding papers into the shredder. Whir, snap, hiss. The machine groaned, devouring the evidence of something he couldn't afford the world to see. I should have walked away. I should have faded back into the rainy hallway and pretended I was just the loyal foot soldier he thought I was. But then I saw it. A single sheet of heavy cream-colored vellum missed the maw of the machine. It fluttered to the Persian rug, landing face up. In that moment, Arthur looked at me. Not through the door. He looked at me through the reflection in the window. Our eyes met in a dark glass. He didn't panic. He smiled. It was the smile of a man who had just decided to kill a nuisance. "Elias," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp that sounded like a shovel hitting dry earth. "You've always had a problem with timing." He walked over, picked up the paper, and didn't even look at it. He folded it slowly, tucked it into his breast pocket, and then he did the one thing I hadn't prepared for. He didn't fire me. He didn't scream. He walked to his cabinet, poured 2 glasses of that liquid gold, and handed one to me. "Drink," he commanded. The scotch tasted like copper and betrayal. As I swallowed, he leaned in close, so close I could smell the rot of his ego. "I am liquidating the company, Elias, and since you've seen more than a shadow should, I'm making you the face of the fall. The SEC is going to find $300 million missing from the pension funds, and they're going to find your digital signature on every single transfer." The room tilted. The air became thick, like breathing through wet wool. "Why?" I whispered. My voice sounded small against the thunder outside. "Because the world needs a villain, and you've spent 12 years making yourself invisible. No one will miss a ghost." He patted my cheek, a dry, terrifying gesture, and walked out, leaving me in the dark with the smell of his cigar and the realization that my life had just been erased. The weeks that followed were the abyss. I didn't go home to my apartment. I couldn't. The feds were there within 6 hours. I spent my nights in a residential hotel that smelled of boiled cabbage and old despair. The wallpaper was peeling like sunburned skin, and the only light came from a flickering neon sign across the street that hummed a low-frequency dirge. I had nothing. My bank accounts were frozen. My reputation was a burnt-out husk. I sat on the edge of a bed that felt like it was made of gravel, staring at the ceiling. The weight of the air in that room was suffocating. It felt like the city was sitting on my chest, pressing the last bits of hope out of my lungs. I thought about the river. I thought about how easy it would be to let the black water of the Hudson take the place of the rain.
document hadn't been destroyed when I saw it, and Sterling, in his arrogance, hadn't realized that when he tucked it into his pocket, he had brushed against his desk. A tiny, jagged scrap of that cream-colored vellum had snagged on a splinter of mahogany. I had palmed it before I left that office. I'd pulled it out of my wallet now. It was a fragment, no larger than a postage stamp. It had 3 words on it, written in an archaic looping script. Quote, "Trust of thee," and a partial seal, a blue wax seal with a golden griffin. Most people would see trash. I saw a thread. I spent my last $100 on a burner phone and a library card. For 3 weeks, I became a creature of the stacks. I lived in the basement of the New York Public Library, surrounded by the smell of rotting paper and the dust of forgotten lives. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just hunted. I tracked the blue wax seal. It didn't belong to a corporation. It didn't belong to a bank. It belonged to the Van Hoosen estate, the original Dutch family that had owned the island of Manhattan when it was nothing but mud and trees. Arthur Sterling didn't own the land his tower sat on. He held a 99-year ground lease, a lease that was set to expire. The document he was shredding wasn't an SEC filing. It was the right of reversion. The original family had died out, or so the world thought. The land was supposed to revert to the city, but the document I saw suggested there was a trust, a private, ancient trust, that held the fee-simple title to the very dirt beneath $140 million worth of glass and steel. If someone controlled that trust, they didn't just own the buildings, they owned the right to tear them down. I found the last living heir in a nursing home in Queens. She was 94, smelled of lavender and fading memories, and she had no idea she was the most powerful woman in the city. She had no children, no heirs, just a pile of unpaid medical bills and a heart that was tired of beating. I sat by her bed for 3 days. I didn't lie to her. I told her exactly who I was, a ghost looking for a body. I told her what Arthur Sturge just done. I told her I wanted to burn his kingdom to the ground and use the ashes to build something that mattered. She looked at me with eyes that had seen the turn of a century. She reached out, her hand like a bundle of dry twigs, and touched my face. "He has a cold heart, doesn't he?" she whispered. "He doesn't have a heart at all," I replied. She signed the papers. She didn't want the money. She wanted the peace of knowing the bully wouldn't win. She transferred the Van Hoosen trust to me for the price of $1 and a promise to buy her a window box of real tulips. The ghost finally had a weapon. The shadow plan took 6 months. I lived like a rat in the walls. I used the last of my hidden cash to hire a lawyer who specialized in impossible titles, a man who lived in a basement and didn't ask questions as long as the bills were crisp. We moved in silence. We filed the deeds in 3 different counties. We waited for the exact moment the ground lease expired. Arthur Sterling was busy. He was celebrating. He had successfully pinned the Sterling scandal on me. The news called me the ghost of Wall Street, the man who stole from widows and disappeared into the night. Arthur was the hero who had saved the company by restructuring, a move that actually tripled his personal net worth. He was throwing a gala, a victory ball, at the top of the Sterling Tower. I watched from the street. The rain was falling again, but this time it felt like a baptism. I was dressed in a suit that cost more than my first car, bought with the first draw of the trust's credit line. I walked past the velvet ropes. The security guards didn't recognize me. Why would they? They were looking for a criminal, not the man who owned the floor they were standing on. The elevator ride was silent. The air in the car was pressurized, popping my ears. 44 floors. When the doors opened, the smell hit me first. Expensive perfume, roasting lamb, and the sharp, metallic tang of success. The room was a sea of silk and diamonds. At the center of it all stood Arthur. He looked triumphant. He was holding a glass of Macallan, laughing at a joke made by the mayor. I walked straight through the crowd. The music didn't stop, but the air around me seemed to chill. People sensed a predator before they saw one. I stopped 5 feet from him. "The ice is melting, Arthur," I said. He froze. The glass didn't leave his lips, but his eyes went wide. The color drained from his face until he looked like the paper he had tried to shred. "Elias," he hissed, his voice cracking. "You're supposed to be in a hole somewhere. Security. Security works for the person who pays the lease, Arthur," I said, my voice projecting through the sudden silence of the room.